Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 146 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am currently sitting in my car in the Red River Gorge because it's loud out there. Rocktoberfest is, setting up for Rocktoberfest is getting underway. So there's all sorts of goings on all around my car. So I'm huddled in here in this miserable little sweat box to make sure that you all get this episode. I'm also getting a little bit of a cold here. I'm a little stuffy, a little sniffly, and that doesn't bode well for emceeing this thing all weekend. We're going to make it happen regardless. I'm currently snorting emergency, and I think it's helping. I do want to say a huge thank you to everybody because we just wrapped up our biggest month yet for the podcast with around 45,000 downloads for the month, which is kind of mind-blowing when I think about where this thing started, and it's such a tiny little niche podcast. So I appreciate you all spreading it around to your friends. Keep doing that, and I will keep putting out these episodes. It means the world to me that everybody is listening. Lots of people are supporting on the Patreon, and that makes it possible for me to go interview people in person and sit down and really get some quality information and good conversations. I appreciate that massively. I don't have a ton of time here, so I am just going to jump into this thing here. We start by talking about space constraints for boards versus spray walls with my guests today, who are Will Anglin. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, Will Anglin is no stranger to you. We also have Michael Rosato, who is also with Tension Climbing. And I wanted to sit down with these two because in the Tension Training Center, they have their own board, the Tension board, which is fabulous. And they also have their big spray wall. So I wanted to compare and contrast the two things. And we start talking about space constraints. And I just want to let you know that if you listen at the end of this thing on the other side, I will be telling you about new tension boards that have just come out that are specifically sized for home wall users. So if you're a home wall user, you're thinking about the tension board, and you've only got a small space, you're going to want to listen after the jump. All right, let's get into it.
Maybe don't know.
You have to mold your body to this inhuman medium that doesn't care at all about you or what you want to do or whether you want to send or not or how long you've been training. You just have to figure it out.
Power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time
Will prime you on the topic here. Yeah, so kind of the idea is I'm going to be doing this big home wall series like over the next year, 2 years, forever, who knows. And what I really want to discuss is like what the pros and cons are between boards versus spray walls, and maybe get into a little bit of what the pros and cons are of each board.
This is a topic I discussed a lot.
Cool.
Yeah, so I was saying, I feel like you got a lot to say about it.
Yeah. And like what boards or what we're looking for in spray walls. Like if we do decide spray
Yeah.
wall is the way, who should be using a spray wall? How do we determine that? And I think maybe you guys have the best and most recent sort of knowledge on those two things, because you've got the tension training center here. I heard somewhere you guys are churning out hard climbers. Is that true?
Churning is a weird word.
We make them. They come here to be made.
They can only be churned if they don't ever talk.
Yeah, you can't come here and talk.
This
We
is like a
don't have
Fight
fun.
Club kind of a thing.
No
Yes.
talking,
Yes.
only churning.
You don't talk about the tension training center.
No, and you don't
and
talk,
you don't talk
in it.
when you're here.
Exactly.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Because you guys have a big spray wall, and obviously you make a board. Do you make the board or just a board?
Well, I like to think we make the board, but some people would say we just make a board.
Right. Well, being who we are, I would say we make the board, but I think that, boards they all have their pros and cons. But we make the best one. So
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I think really when you're talking boards and spray wall, the whole thing, like everything has its own pros and cons, like depending on which board you choose. If you choose a board, each one of those works better in some ways and not as good in other ways, and it just kind of depends what you're looking for. And similar with a spray wall, like a spray wall has pros and cons as compared to boards, and it really just depends on what kind of space you have, what kind of training you're trying to do, and what sort of skill you're coming into this whole situation with.
Yep. So before we start, let's kind of, Nate, how about Michael, you keep that, and then Nate, whenever you want to say something or just want to chime in, just grab the mic from me. That's totally fine. So we're short on a mic here, people, so we're gonna have to be sharing. We're gonna have to be nice guys for change. Let's start with, like, if someone has a home wall, they have space for a home wall, why choose a spray wall versus a board? So first, let's look at space considerations. And let's compare the two. If you had, what space would you need for a board, do you think?
Well, so with the different kinds of boards, different ones are going to fit in different spaces better or worse. So and really the whole idea with the boards is that there's this standardized layout and everything. And so you can't really deviate from those space constraints. Like you it doesn't work super well if you try to condense,
Squish it down.
or like,
cut off part of it.
Yeah, cut off part, change the dimensions. So you really need, at the very least, a space that you can tip an 8x12 plane in. And so
Are all the boards pretty much 8x12? Kilter's making a much bigger one now.
Yeah, Kilter has a bigger one, but they also have an 8x12.
Okay.
Which is better for a small space. So between those three boards, the moon board really only supports, as far as I know at this point, like a 20 and a 40 degree angle, which and they need the kickboard is mandatory, which makes it so you do have to have a fairly high ceiling in order to get a board like that in there. The Kilter board and the tension board support a much larger angle range, and so a steeper board is going to fit into a room with a shorter ceiling height better. And so if you're space constrained, deciding between those two boards is probably where you're looking. And then if you have more space, that opens up the moon board into consideration as well.
Why hasn't any of the companies, I'm sure you have a good answer for this, why haven't we just made a board that fits into an 8-foot tall space, which is kind of the U.S. standard, for better or for worse?
It's on the way.
Oh, it's on the way.
I can't say anything more.
Don't
ask
all
me.
the secrets here at the Tension Training Center. Okay. And so width-wise, we're talking 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
All of the standard boards that you would bring into your house are 12 feet. You just have to be able to tip it to fit into your space. Okay, and then spray wall can be any size, right?
Yeah, and that's the real beauty of the spray wall is you can make it whatever you want. And so space-wise, it's really flexible. With what you're training, it's really flexible because you can put any holds on it. You can put them anywhere you want. The main thing that you got to think about when it comes to spray walls is you have to be able to assess yourself really well in order to equip a spray wall in a way that's going to be really useful for you.
Yep.
And
totally.
so that's really where it becomes nice to have a board, because then you don't have to necessarily do any route setting. You don't have to pick which holds are going to work well for you and such. You just get the standard sets and you already know where they go, and then you have a database of climbs. But if you have the skill and you have the ability to get all the different holds that you would need, and you have the construction experience, and you can build a good wall, then I think spray walls are incredible. I think they're probably my favorite.
Oh, that's interesting to know. And I'm going to get into that in a minute, but still talking kind of about the space, is there an optimal angle, in your opinion, for a spray wall? Like if someone has a 10-foot ceiling, should they put in a 45, or should they put in a 30 with less climbing space, or should they put in a 60 that can be much longer?
I typically try to push people towards a steeper wall.
Okay.
At least 30, and probably not more than 50 or so. You can always get bigger
Why
holds.
those angles? Why would you choose
well,
those?
because you can always add volumes and you can always get bigger holds. But once you put a 20-degree or a 10-degree wall in a space, that's it. And then,
that's it. That's
it.
exactly what you meant. That's it.
That's it. It's short. It's going to be hard to do really powerful moves if you have a short ceiling, like you're only getting a couple moves in. The holds that it takes to make difficult climbing on a 20-degree wall are not super fun to climb on all the time.
Yeah.
So
totally. That's something we're finding in the machine shop, is that, I love the 20-degree wall in there. It's much shorter than the 45, much smaller wall, but a lot of the angle we're climbing on outside on the sport routes is roughly around 20. And I wanted it for that reason, just to be working on really bad small holds and tiny little feet. And it's really effective for that, but it's not that fun, and people tend to steer clear of it because to try something hard, it's gonna wreck your fingers a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you were gonna pick one angle, 45 is probably the place to start.
Do you think a spray wall can be too small? Is there a minimum size that's necessary? Because this is something that I definitely have heard people talk about, where maybe they built one and they were like, oh, it's only, let's say 7 feet tall. And they're like, well, you can't do anything with that, or something along those lines. Or maybe they don't have that much space. Is there value in having a smaller wall?
Oh, yeah. If you've ever seen the cellar boards in the UK,
Yeah, totally.
those dudes get brutal strong, and they're doing one or two moves. And the nice thing, so if you can really separate in your head, like, okay, I'm training in here on this board. It's not, I'm not, trying to top out. I'm not sending anything, like I'm training. You can have a wall that's 4 feet tall and get something out of it. You can contrive moves. You can make yourself do 8 moves without ever really going anywhere, because why not?
You'd have to be pretty hardcore to want to build a 4 feet tall wall.
Oh yeah.
But I agree. You could definitely get something out of it.
Yeah. The person, I think, becomes really important. If it's not as fun as going into the gym and climbing the green problem and grabbing all the cool holds and slopers and spinning around and going feet first. But, people have gotten really, really strong on really, really short boards doing things that look really, really not fun.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. We had the engine room in Cincinnati was a pretty small little space. The ceilings are 8 feet tall, and we had about a 40-degree board in there, and it's 3 moves to the top or something like that. And I definitely got the strongest I'd been at the time, training almost exclusively on that board. So definitely doable. 45. That's kind of the angle, and that's the angle we chose for our big wall in the machine shop. What's your spray wall out here? It's got a couple of different angles.
It's 3 angles. It goes 55, 45, 35, and it's like 13 feet tall, I think. I really like, kind of the ultimate for me for a training wall is that convex bulge.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite. If I could only have one wall, it would be that, and so that's what we built. What I really like about it is your feet are constantly pulled like further away from you, and so it really emphasizes foot tension, and it's always pushing your hips out, which makes it hard. Where when you get into like a concave scoop, you're always able to suck your hips really close into the wall,
right,
and direct more pressure down onto your feet, which is great and totally valid and everything. But when it comes to trying to, really make
to train to get strong,
hard stuff, like you want it to be difficult. And so having your hips kind of constantly being pushed out forces you to have more core tension and emphasizes the hands a little bit more.
Yeah. So it seems like 40 is kind of the board angle. That seems to be the angle most people kind of settle at with boards. Would you agree with that? Or is that only because that's where the moon board started?
It's pretty much that's where the moon board started.
Okay.
That was just the angle of that board in the schoolroom. And it's a great angle.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. I think in the U.S., people were building walls at 45 as just a more round, it's right in the middle. We'll go 45.
Yeah. Are there benefits, do you think, to the 45? Like, what's the benefit of a 45 over a 50 or over a 30?
It's, like I said, it's just kind of right in the middle. It's pretty easy to make difficult problems. Like the small holds don't have to be that small, and it still will really tax your fingers. It's when you start getting a lot steeper than 45, like 50 and beyond, you end up having to grab some pretty big holds.
Yeah.
And likewise, as when we talked about like 20, when you get more towards vertical, things just have to get really heinously small and pretty sharp. And so 45 is just that nice middle ground, and give or take 5 degrees, you're still pretty much there.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, because a lot of times I'll crank the tension board down to 50, and yeah, you are primarily using bigger holds, but again, you're bringing into play a lot more things like core tension and whatnot. So you're able to you're a lot of times you're cutting feet more, which inherently builds your core a little bit better. But my favorite angle is 35. I love it because you get this, you can climb on the smallest holds and still manage them.
Yep.
But yeah, I would say 45 is that's my go-to. Every time I get on the tension board, 45 is where I start typically, because it's right in the middle there where you're getting kind of best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I found that at 45, it's a good angle to be able to sort of tailor things to people's needs. Like if someone needs to be using smaller holds to gain the confidence on smaller holds or whatever, they can still do that while using pretty big feet and use pretty small holds on a 45, and vice versa. They can use pretty good holds, tiny feet, and it still works. Whereas you go a little steeper and it becomes much, much harder to use small feet, no matter what size holds you're using, or much smaller hands, no matter what size feet you're using. And as soon as you make it closer to vertical, it just gets too easy. When you're trying to, move things into people's comfort zones, in and out of people's comfort zones that way. So
For sure.
45 seems like a good middle ground, so
Yeah.
to speak.
It's literally pretty much the middle ground. Anything less than 45 is slab anyway, so.
I'm pretty good at slab climbing in that case, and
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
think I
really.
was until right now. Are there people, specific kind of person you think is suited better toward a board or toward a spray wall? And for instance, I'll say this. I think if you don't have a pretty psyched community of climbers around you, like if you're a lone wolf, or if you're somebody who lives in an area where there aren't a bunch of climbers who are going to come in session with you, then a spray wall can be really, really hard to climb on, to set on, and to make work for you. And maybe you're a lot better off having a board in that situation.
Yeah, even if you're, really good at route setting, or, have all the skills to equip a good spray wall, it's almost impossible to sort of get out of your own head when you're making up boulder problems for yourself. Like, as hard as you try to make things outside of your style or a little bit different than you would typically climb to kind of get yourself out of your wheelhouse, it's like almost impossible to do. And in that case, a board becomes a really good tool because you have access to a larger community and can get on boulder problems that other people made that really force you to get outside of your own box. And to the point where, like, again, shameless tension board plug, but like I have trouble making up boulder problems outside of what I actually want to do. And so when I climb on the tension board, will either try and climb other people's boulders, or if I make up a boulder, I make it up and then mirror it immediately and only climb the mirror of like the initial boulder I had in my head, because I have a tendency to overemphasize my right hand. And I've been doing it for so long because I had carpal tunnel and my left hand got really weak. And I cannot for the life of me like break myself out of that. And so I make up a boulder, I mirror it, and then it does exactly what I need it to do.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, I mean, when you have a spray wall, you've got to really understand your weaknesses, right? And you've got to be motivated to focus on those weaknesses. I'm terrible at it because like when I come in here and we're climbing on the beast, like if you look in our app that we use for the spray wall to sort of log our climbs, I never make anything up. I mean I mean honestly it's because I always run into the rut of doing the same moves or holding the same holds, and that's the reason why every time I come in here I typically have to follow somebody, because I know because Will he's a lot bigger than me, he can hit things a lot further, so it's good for me to do those things. But yeah, I think it comes down to the motivation you've got and sort of the awareness you have to understand your weaknesses and not kind of do the same old thing over and over and over. So
Totally. So for people who do have spray walls and maybe don't have amazing communities or groups of people to climb with, are there good ways that y'all have found for making up boulders? Because this is something that I think has become sort of a lost art. I was talking with Chris about this the other day, how when I started gym climbing, basically everything was just kind of a spray wall, but it had tape up it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things that, you would climb the initial, and nothing got rotated for like 6 months. So you would climb all the initial boulders, or what you could do. And then from there, everyone would have makeup boulders on all these sets. And I just realized the other day in the gym, I was like, I haven't seen anyone create a makeup boulder with set gym problems in years. Like, the boulders aren't close enough, turnover's so high. I mean, turnover's high enough, not only that you wouldn't run out of stuff just on that set, but there's always new things. But I think that's a really cool skill to develop that I don't think is being naturally developed in gym climbing now. So is there an approach that y'all like for when you do have to set something for yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, even when I was growing up in gyms, it was still tape boulder problems, super high density. And sometimes, like in the very first bouldering cave I started in earth treks in Colombia, the foot jibs would never move. And so they just got polished and heinous and
Well seasoned.
Yeah.
very well seasoned. Yeah, so this ties into another thing that I have a lot of thoughts about, which is ergonomics. And so what I do, like just on the spray wall, I never let myself move anything. Like as soon as you allow yourself to start turning or moving holds, you lose.
You've gone down the wrong path.
Yeah, don't do it.
Just before you keep going, the only time I'll allow myself to turn a hold is if I put up a problem for myself that felt too easy, and then I'll turn it so that it's harder. That's the only time I allow it. I don't ever make things easier.
All right, I'll allow it.
There are some times when, I mean, we'll be making up one and sort of granted, this doesn't answer the question of how you do it by yourself, but if you have one other person, like we definitely will sort of add a move, play the add a move thing, and that helps you sort of come up with a diverse sort of thing that you're doing. But there are times when he'll be like, I don't know about that, or I'll be like, I don't know about that, and then one of us will do it, and we're like, damn, we got to keep it, So it's like,
totally.
Yeah.
So ergonomics is,
I think just having not. And this I think kind of gets to the core of climbing, like not letting yourself move something. Like you figure out what you need to do yourself to make it work. Don't change what's on the wall. Don't turn the hold. Don't add a foot.
If it's already there, I don't move it.
Yeah.
But if I'm putting on new holds with a move in mind, if it's easy, I'll change it.
Well, yeah, and that I think is a different thing that we should talk about, which is like how to actually start putting holds on a spray wall, which I think is really important. But yeah, as far as like, making stuff up outside of your own typical style or just trying to get yourself to move differently, I typically have this sort of knee-jerk reaction where like I'll grab two holds and I'll look up and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's the hold I want to go to. And then I don't go to that hold. Like that's like the very first thing making up the boulder problem. I get into a position, I look up, I'm like, oh, I want to go there. And then I definitely don't go there. I pick something else where I'm like, I don't know if you can even do that. Like that looks gross, or that might not be possible, or why would you ever grab that hold that way? When I start thinking like that, that's typically when I'm like, that's part of the climb now. Like, let's figure out how to make that whack thing work without moving anything, just see what happens. And that's really where I see the biggest benefit, regardless, like whether you're climbing on a board or a spray wall, like anytime you're making something up, if you're worried about it, then that's probably the right thing. If you look and you're like, oh yeah, that's good, that's sick, that's totally right, then you're already in your own rut. And yeah, break out, go one hold further, use the hold that looks like it's pointed the wrong way, pick the foot that's too high or too bad or too far away or turn the wrong direction. That's really what I think hard climbing is about anyway. It's not even like, oh, that hold's really hard. It's, man, all these holds are really good. I don't know why I can't do it. Like, why right. is this difficult? Why are they pointed this way?
Yeah, that's the case so often. And I think you just kind of illustrated a really important way to set hard things for yourself. Like, if you drew a circle around a hold, like, okay, I want to go to that, I'm going to use that foot, and you're creating this circle, where you're comfortable, then that's the circle you don't set in, come in closer or go out way further and just get uncomfortable. I think that's the main way to set things harder for yourself. Pick what you think you want to use and then go somewhere else.
Well, that's climbing, right? I mean, you approach a boulder and you get what you get.
Yep.
You got you don't get to change anything really. I mean, you have to change yourself. You have to bend yourself and, move yourself into what the boulder requires of you. So,
Yeah. And I think holds pointing the wrong direction are a really valuable tool for people that I tend to fall into this trap of like, this is the way I'm going to grab it the most comfortably. So this is how I'm going to set it,
Yeah.
instead of, oh, well, let's spin it halfway around and make it seem absolutely fucking ludicrous. And now it might be a much cooler move and is going to teach me a lot more.
Well, and that's, I mean, like Michael said, that's what climbing's all about. And I think it's what really, the one thing that separates rock climbing from everything else is you're presented with this like inhuman, inanimate medium and using no other tools besides, I mean, now we're getting way into knee pads and stuff, but like, minimal
Rabbit hole,
tools.
we're not going down that rabbit
It's
hole.
most like it's your body, and you have to mold your body to this inhuman medium that doesn't care at all about you or what you want to do or whether you want to send or not or how long you've been training or how strong you are. Like, you just have to figure it out. And that kind of process of taking things that, maybe they don't feel great at first or it's a little awkward, and then you figure out how to make yourself be in that place and in those positions and have it not hurt and have it not be awkward and have it almost start to feel easy. And then all of a sudden you're leaking moves and now you're sending a boulder problem. And that's something that I think is really lost for the most part in gym setting and in climbing holds in general, is where the problem is a human is making those things. Like, a human shapes that hold for a human hand, and a human puts those holds on a wall built by a human in positions that are comfortable for a human, like at all the right angles and everything.
But
and
are you human? Let's be honest
I
here.
mean, let's try not to be. Like, and that's really where I feel the disconnect. Like, when I go climbing in the gym, it's fun, you get fit or whatever, but then you go outside and it's like nothing feels the same, and it's because it's a rock.
Yeah.
Like, no one made that. And you can more recreate that on a spray wall than kind of anywhere else, because, where a hold maybe felt really ergonomic in one way is now it's just a little off and it doesn't quite fit exactly what you would think. And now all of a sudden you're like learning these new moves that if you were actually putting the holds on the wall, you would never set, because you're like, oh, that would be gross, that wouldn't work or whatever. And now you're forced to like look at that weird undercling and be like, well, that's where it is. Like, let's figure out how to make that work. And now you're in that rock climbing problem solving mindset. And I think that's super valuable.
Yeah, I agree completely. Just to back up a little bit and kind of build on what we started talking about here, Michael mentioned that you can, reach holds that are much further away. And I think that's a really important thing for Michael. Like you have the ability to watch someone else do it and then understand that it's doable, and for me, it's really valuable to have people climbing in the gym who are stronger than me, whose styles are totally different. Just like for you and Roland, Will, it's probably really valuable for the two of you to climb together because your styles were so different. So for years you were able to feed off of each other, and having that on a spray wall, I think, is massively important. Absolutely.
I mean, Michael is a similar height to Roland as well. And, and then Zach has just an inch of wingspan on me. And so, like, with the group of people I climb with, I get, they make a boulder problem. I get forced into this really small box where I'm all trapped with my knees up in my face and have to figure out ways to move to get out of those too close positions. And then, like, I make something up that I really get to spread out on, and they have to figure out how to, like, gain that extension somehow. And then, Zach will make something up that's at the limit of his reach, and it's just too far for me, and then I have to adapt. So having, and, back to what you said about, like, spray walls really working if you have, a psyched community who's really psyched to push each other. I mean, that's huge. Getting people to climb with who climb differently than you, who are, a different size, like different holds, are better or even not as good, because a boulder problem 3 grades below my max, but in a style I'm totally not comfortable with, that's freaking hard. That could take me more like weeks to do sometimes, you know?
Yeah, and you might learn a lot more from it.
Absolutely. So yeah, anything that can get you outside of your typical box is going to be really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I think, if you're a person who doesn't have that psyched community, I'm really big on trying to build that community. If it's not already built in, try to create it. Just invite a couple of people. Invite the strong kid at your gym to come over and set some boulders. If pros come through on slideshow tours or whatever, invite them over to your home gym. They might just come, and then you've got a Daniel Woods boulder, in your gym that you can play on from now till forever, and maybe project as warm-ups.
Yeah.
I think that's a really easy way to go about it, getting harder boulders.
Absolutely. I grew up in Birmingham, and the first official gym wasn't even there till 2009. I started outside and in little garages and stuff with my friends, and you only really need one person. Even just one more person adds so much more variety to what you're able to do and your motivations. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of building what's not there. Just doing whatever you can to motivate you and other people. That's big.
Yeah. So what type of person needs a board? We're not just saying only the super loners who don't have any friends are the ones who should have boards. So,
well, even if you do have like a motivated community, it's hard to get the right holds, get them in the right places. It takes a lot of time. And if you're a time constrained person and just don't want to mess with that, which I totally get, I just get off on that stuff. And so for me, I'm always kind of tinkering with my board. I've been collecting holds for over a decade for eventually building this wall. I knew one day I would have a wall, and I've been saving them forever. And so, if you're like that kind of person and you're just kind of tweaking out on this sort of stuff, it's really fun to have a spray wall. But if that doesn't sound, constant tweaking and hunting down the right hold and figuring all that out, if that doesn't sound like a good use of your time, then that's, I think, where the boards really shine. And also, again, to that community aspect, it's there's a kid, Nick Pellegrino in Boston, who is really good at these little pinches on the tension board. And I get to, someone who's on the other side of the country from me, pull up his boulders and be like, he did these, these go. And right. I know they're going to typify this style, and this is something I'm really weak on, and I can work on that specifically.
Yeah. And a lot of times you can check the Instagrams or whatever and find people,
get the beta.
Watch people do the boulders.
Yeah.
That even though you can see them in the app, there's still this thing that seems impossible until you watch a video of someone doing it.
Yeah, and you're like, man, he hiked it.
Yeah.
I guess I got to work harder.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
That's what's cool about the boards, is that you're buying into more than just a board. You're buying into sort of a community. And if you are by yourself and you're forced to be by yourself, you no longer are being that, they're all sort of the same all over the world. But, in a way, a lot of these boards are spray walls anyway. They're just kind of made for you. I would say ours is a little different, but, the majority are just a spray wall that they've set up for you, and you can't really, do anything about it. You got to, make up with what you've got. So, but yeah, they definitely come with a community, which that's definitely a good thing, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. And, I have lots of clients who are full-time career people, have families, and oftentimes they'll move into a situation where they don't have time to go to a commercial gym, or there's no great commercial gym nearby, or whatever. For whatever reason, they're like, it's going to be a much more efficient use of my time if I can train at home by myself in this little short window that I have, and that's, I think, the spray boards or the boards shine for those people. I've sent several clients recently, said, just get a tension wall, like get that board. It's going to make your life way simpler. You go to the gym and climb solo anyway, and you're having trouble getting in there and getting enough time in. If you don't value that, like, I'm getting out of the house and getting away from the family stuff, then do it at home. Why not? It's a great tool and makes perfect sense for your situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Would you say, what's your like split, if you don't mind me asking, and you can totally estimate this, I'm not looking for numbers, but between like commercial gym and home wall users who buy the tension board?
I mean, right off the bat, it was more home wall users. I mean, I think that population is just, those are kind of the early adopters. And now it's probably 50-50 about, give or take, depending on the month or the time of year. But
I've seen them more and more in commercial gyms, and I was actually really psyched to see one over in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
At a gym in Melbourne that I did some workshops at. So.
And I mean, that gets me really excited too, because, when you travel, the boards are kind of they're a constant wherever you go. So, if I'm training here and then I get, dragged to some sort of beach vacation somewhere, I can, find a gym nearby and they have a tension board. I'm right on schedule. I can climb all my same boulder problems. I can do all my circuits. It's the same board. Perfect. Like, that's awesome.
When was the last time you went on a beach vacation?
2 years ago, and it was miserable.
I just went on one. I got a good sunburn, but I didn't find any tension boards laying around, but definitely brought my flashboard.
I hate the beach. I like it cold and dark.
Yeah, seriously.
That's my thing.
Just a little further on this community talk, I'm assuming, based on what I've experienced and what I've seen here, I'm assuming you have people who are interested in just coming in to climb on the board because they've seen it on Instagram or something like that. They're here in Denver for CWA or whatever from across the world, and they're like, I need to go visit that place because I've seen that spray wall and I want to climb on that spray wall, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rad. We have people come through and it's cool. I mean, it's cool for us. Like, we geek out on it all the time with like Daniel and Sean and Dave and all those dudes in here. Like, they make up a boulder and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, I guess, you can climb like that. That works. And being able to come up with something and then be like, man, that's really hard. I don't know if that goes. And then, Daniel comes in and flashes it and you're like, well, all right, I guess it's fine. And yeah, I mean, that gets us psyched. And we have people come in and are like, I want to try that boulder that I saw Daniel do on Instagram. We're like, there it is. Good luck.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, it's it's nice to meet everybody to come. Yeah, that comes and sees it. I mean, our board sort of turned into this like I don't know. It's like an R&D playground as well. We throw things on there that we're sort of interested in maybe releasing and whatnot. We tweak it and see how it feels. But yeah, it's definitely cool to meet all of these people that are interested in something we have for which is weird to us in a way. But yeah, really, really, really cool.
Yeah, let's talk cost for a second. Like, one of the benefits of buying a board is that you're buying the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's the price. You're going to have to construct the frame or whatever to put the holds on, actually build the wall, but that's pretty much the cost of it. It's really easy to look at that big upfront cost and get scared of it. If I see a $8,000 price tag or whatever, that sounds way more expensive than I'm going to build this plywood wall for $500 and then start putting holds on it. because it's really hard to just calculate how many holds are going to fit on this spray wall, how much I'm going to have to spend on all of those holds.
Well, and then you start putting your human hours, like your time into it, and all of a sudden it can get pricey real quick.
Yeah, and I don't really honestly have a good sense of what a spray wall costs. Like, it'd be interesting to find out per square foot roughly what a good spray wall costs, because like you, I've collected holds over the years. I get holds from some companies, from friends. I trade holds, so I definitely have not paid full price for the holds on my wall. But I bet it gets really, really expensive.
Yeah, it gets really expensive. And I mean, for me, and I'm still, this kind of stuff still gets me. I mean, like even for the tension board with, just the holds between $3,000 and $4,000, I still am trying to find the cheapest eggs at the grocery store and stuff. So when I look at the price tag of the thing that I'm making, I'm like, whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But then I look at the spray wall that we built, and we probably just materials for the actual wall was probably like $7,000, and then the man hours between Gabe and I, we probably put 60 hours into building the wall, and then there's probably 15. I don't know. It's hard to put a cost on the holds because I've been putting them together for so long, but tens of thousands of dollars in holds. Plus, I've probably even where the board's at now, I've probably put 120 hours into just putting holds on the wall in the right places and moving them around. I'm not even done.
Oh yeah.
I'm still tweaking. I still have there are holds I have in my head that I know I want to get on the wall at some point, and I'm still kind of hunting them down. And whenever I get enough, I'm like, okay, cool. Hey, everybody, let me know what your main projects are. I won't move those, but I'm shuffling stuff around, and boom, there's another 40 hours again. So and then you go back and you look at something like the tension board, and you're like, well, I'll spend $3,000 to $4,000 on the holds. It'll take me 1 to 2 hours to put them on, and then I have 15,000 boulder problems.
Yeah.
And that's there's something to be said for that as well.
It's pretty damned appealing, actually, and I'm in the same boat as you with our spray wall. I can disappear in there for 3 or 4 hours, and my wife's like, oh, what'd you do in there? And I'm like, oh, I've just been in there working. And she comes in and she's like, it looks exactly the same.
My wife dreads whenever I get into wall tweaking mode, because I'll come in here and I'll be like, oh, I'm just going to go tweak some holds around for 2 hours and then climb for a little bit. And then all of a sudden it's 8 or 10 hours have gone by. I haven't eaten. I haven't had anything to drink.
Man. Yeah.
I'm just, my eyes are all glazed over, and I'm still there moving holds around, and it's you gotta stop, and it's time to come home for dinner.
Yeah, the spray wall obsession can definitely be bad for your health.
Yeah.
No question. I'd be interested in trying to figure that out. What a spray wall costs roughly per square foot. I bet we could come up with I
almost don't even want to know.
A range. And I bet it's more expensive than a board.
Oh yeah, I mean, undoubtedly.
Especially if you count hours.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
A lot of spray walls have holds that you can't even get anymore too, and that's the cool
best
thing.
Spray walls.
That's the best spray wall.
Yeah.
We got old pushers and things that you just can't find, and I mean that's priceless. So there's that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Other thoughts on you sell these boards? I mean, that's part of your job, and they sell themselves quite a bit as well. But what is your spiel for why should someone buy a board, whether it's a gym or a home wall user, that we haven't talked about?
I mean, the tension board specifically, or boards in general?
Let's go tension board specifically.
Okay. Well, let me do boards in general real quick, and then I'll do tension board, because there's a lot of boards out there. They all have their, pros and cons, and I don't want to like discount them because like they're all good. It just kind of depends on what you want.
Yeah, I think each one has its value.
Yeah, and so kind of assessing what is most important to you and which board is going to deliver that to you, I think is the first stepping stone. And then just realizing, like Michael said earlier, you're not just buying a board, you're buying into a community. And so different boards have different communities. There's a lot of overlap too. So really just kind of assessing the boards themselves and what you want, what's going to fit in your space, all that stuff. And once you kind of get into that mindset, it's pretty easy to pick which board to get. What I tried to do with the tension board specifically is to create a really efficient and well-rounded use of space. And so, 8x12 is easy because it's 3 sheets of plywood. We made it so that you can use it with or without a kickboard, so that helps you get it into shorter ceiling heights if you want. And then aside from that, kind of the 3 major things were an adjustable wall, having it be symmetrical, and really focusing on wood. And with the adjustability, that's one of the things that's pretty difficult for a home wall user. Because engineering that can be troublesome if you've not actually built walls like that in the past. And what's good now is there are a handful of adjustable wall systems that you can actually buy for your home. And there's, all different ones. Grasshopper Frameworks is one that has like a lot of different options for, making them cost effective. Kamiki makes a wall, and there's going to be more and more as this industry grows.
Yeah, those were the 2 I looked at CWA that I liked the best for sure.
Yeah, and then so if you can't build an adjustable wall, picking an angle, and that can also help you sort of decide between the boards too, because some boards support more angles than others, and the wooden holds on the tension board, I really wanted something that wouldn't wreck your skin, because I've personally have really bad skin, and if I'm training during the week and want to go out on the weekend and try and climb something hard, I can't be ruining my skin all week. I've got to be able to kind of almost simultaneously grow skin from the last weekend where I split my tip, still be able to train, and then heal enough to go out on the weekend and try and split my tip again.
Which for him isn't that hard.
No, I've got
he's
pudding
tips all the time.
Pudding tips. And also with wood, you get this like really kind of when we had talked at CWA and you'd brought up you had talked to someone about like offensive and defensive grip. Right. And like I told you then, I think about the same thing, but just different words.
Different terms, yeah.
But that's sort of like aggressive style where you never really get to relax into the texture of a hold, and you're just constantly squeezing and having to carry that full body tension through multiple moves at a time. That sort of training stimulus is, super invaluable. And having slippery holds for your hands and slippery holds for your feet and just constantly being on and never really relaxing, that's powerful in a literal and figurative sense. So that was, why we decided wood and why we decided hardwood, because with plywood, the wood is actually softer than the glue, and so you wear the wood layers down between the glue layers, and then the holds get this like kind of aggressive texture again, and that was like the whole point to not have that in the beginning.
Interesting.
So we just go with hardwood, and then the symmetry is huge for, like I was saying earlier, like trying to get yourself outside your box, like making a boulder problem and then being able to flip it helps you address, different strengths and weaknesses, helps you identify different strengths and weaknesses. it's surprising how different it can be where you'll flash a boulder on one side and then be like 3 sessions deep on a single move on the mirror of the boulder problem. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
And being able to then like videotape yourself, kind of do that self-assessment, it's almost, it makes it easier to sort of coach yourself and be like, I know I can do that move. I did it on the other side, but I can't do it on this side. Obviously, it's possible. Let me look at a video of me doing it the way that I did it and the way that I'm not. Like, what's different here? And that gets you in a really good growth mindset and helps you if you're that kind of lone wolf person and you don't have someone there who's watching you and giving you feedback and helping make you up boulder problems. That mirror function is hugely beneficial. And we figure out new ways to use it every time we session on the board.
Yeah, no, I think the tension approach is a bit more training esque. You know, I mean, you get so many things out of it other than just a climbing wall. You know, I mean, just for example, like say you can't put a campus board in there. I mean, the symmetry aspect allows you to just campus on the board. I mean, we've got big enough holes where you can make campus boulder problems. I do it all the time. I mean, so from that standpoint, I mean, you're getting a lot more training out of in a full bodied, you know, workout from it. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of super valuable in that way. But
I mean, you're basically hangboarding too.
Right, exactly.
Like when I'm doing like cycles where I'm doing a lot more tension board than usual, I like bring my campus board levels down. I bring my hangboard levels down because it's really kind of a holistic training stimulus. Like you're using everything.
My fingers get worked way more on a tension board than they do hangboarding, campusing, spray wall, whatever. Okay, we're almost running out of time here. We have to get Nate to a tattoo appointment.
Getting some ink.
With Marina. So friend of yours, friend of ours, guest of the podcast. So
very badass.
But last question, really quick answers. If you have access to a spray wall and a tension board, moon board, kilter board, whatever, is there any reason to ever go to a commercial gym?
Absolutely.
What's the top reason for you?
Well, the one thing that all of these boards, definitely like boards like tension kilter moon, and pretty much every spray wall I've ever seen, they really lack that level of dimensionality and negative space that you get in gyms, like all that really featured stuff in roofs and big volumes, and really developing that sort of proprioception and ability to sort of assess space and move around in these really multi-dimensional ways is also super valuable. And
despite what the naysayers say,
like the weird really comp valuable stuff, the crazy big hold blobby weird things where you're like, oh, you'd never find anything like this outside.
Yeah,
like get over it, man. That stuff is so good for you.
Totally agree.
It all comes down to variety. So if you have the ability to go to a place that's going to give you variety no matter what it is, do it. So, I mean, it's going to help you in the long run. Your board's not going to answer every question, or it's not going to make you good at everything that's out there. So, anytime you've got the option of doing more variety, do it.
Yep, I completely agree. And we're just going to have a whole nother episode about why that stuff is valuable, and it's not just the approach of you can only have little crimpers on a 45-degree wall.
Damn right.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you guys a ton.
Thanks, man.
You know, I always enjoy sitting down at Tension and talking to these guys. They put a ton of thought and energy into making a really incredible product, a whole line of incredible products. And you are doing yourself a disservice if you're interested in training for climbing and you haven't checked these guys out. At the very least, go check out the blog and read some of Will's genius ramblings. So, I mentioned this in the beginning, and I just want to let you know a couple of the details about these tension board crops, which are essentially the problem with trying to fit a home wall into your space that doesn't quite work is no one has any good suggestions for how to make that happen. grades are going to change, moves are going to change. So there's some contention there. Tension, I didn't mean to do that. Contention, tension. Tension has solved this problem, essentially. They've put out 2 crops. They have the short and the short and narrow crop. Short is 10 feet by 8 feet. The short and narrow is 10 feet by 5 feet. So then you've got a much smaller tension board. And you can go in the app, the tension board app, and check out the problems that are included and check out what that looks like if you're interested in having that set and having that board in your home space. I personally think a tiny little wall can be really, really valuable, especially if it's in a place where you're going to use it more often than not. And if you're not going to get to the gym and you would use this home wall instead, then this is a really smart way to go. And again, Tension innovating in what they offer to people who are looking to get better at climbing. And I assume that's all of you out there. If you're not trying to get better at climbing, stop listening. Unsubscribe, because I'm trying to help you get better. You can find the links to check out these tension boards, full size, the short, and the short and narrow, as well as all of their other training products. You can find that right there in your pocket supercomputer in the show notes. You can also find it on powercompanyclimbing.com. There are lots of other things you can find at powercompanyclimbing.com as well. There's all sorts of ways to support the podcast with shirts and products and a Patreon that you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and get extra episodes. And there's tons and tons and tons of information over there, as well as training plans. So go check it out. Dig around on the website. You'll probably find a good blog that I've totally forgotten about. If you do, send it to me, because I'd love to repost that stuff. You can also look for us on the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Pinterest at Power Company Climbing. And you can look for us on the Twitter, but you won't find us there because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, 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 power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power. 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 This time to build. 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 This time. Cause job is the sinister character.